And it also extends out to their dependents, which is also extremely critical here. And it is extended, it's a bar on entering the United States if you do not have a valid visa in those classifications till December 31st, 2020. Now, the question always is, who all, is it students, anything more than that? But right now it's predominantly the H-1Bs, L-1s, J-1s, H-2Bs.
One of the big questions we're getting a lot nowadays from lots of our viewers and our readers, and that is, does it apply to anybody who's already in the United States who are currently working? What is the impact to them, if there is any?
Of course. No, it does not apply in the sense of stopping H-1B process. And that's definitely something I've gotten a lot of questions about. There's been statements out there, all H-1s banned. No, that's actually not correct. If you're in the United States, H-1B, L-1, J-1 process, they can all actually continue on. So you can do amendments, you can do transfers, you can do extensions, you can do change of status. So I just completed my H-1B cap season for this year. We filed change of status. It does not impact them in that sense. But here's the unintended consequence of where it does impact them. If one of these individuals who are in the United States and their visa has expired in that classification, like let's say you're here on an H-1B, your visa expired, you have status, you're working, your I-94 is valid, but you want to travel. There's an emergency, there's vacation plans, there's marriages, things that are happening in personal life in your home country, and your visa has expired, you're not going to be able to renew that visa at the US consulate and be able to come back in if you're in that category. So what does that kind of do? It almost makes you a virtual prisoner in the United States until December 31st, 2020, and probably even longer than that.
But if it expired, can they, because of the travel restriction, because of the consulate closed in India, because of all those things, can those people continue working just like a stopgap, or?
They can work in the United States. They're in status, right? So I always get a question about visa and I-9, status. Very different things. So that's important to understand. A visa, the page that has your picture on it, has a classification, validity period, that's not your status. That's actually an entry document into the United States. You have to get it from the US consulate. But if you're in the United States and you have an I-94 that's valid, whether it's through a student or whether you're on an H-1B, L-1, you can continue to work, you continue to live, you continue to do everything you're doing as of right now. What happens is if you travel, then, and the visa in that passport has expired, you're not going to be able to come back in. So you're stuck in the United States. And that's important because, a lot of people have their family members overseas. And there's an emergency. So you have to make some difficult choices here. I have people who say, my father is ill, my mother is ill, my parents, one of them died. There's situations like that. What do I do? And that is the decision that has to be made for individuals who are here in the US.
Jaisal, Faraz, feel free anytime to come up.
I have a related question. So how long US plans to keep their consulates closed, and what impact would that have on all the stakeholders?
Okay, so there is no formal guidance as to when they're planning on keeping it closed or when they're actually going to reopen. What we're hearing is it's actually really going to be about country conditions. They're not just going to open up all the consulates. In fact, if you have read somewhere, there's a little blurb out that they actually opened the US consulate in Antarctica. Okay, of all places, but they have not opened in other places. The reason is it's about the COVID-19 in one sense, because India, for example, has extreme, the spikes are going on right now. We don't anticipate them opening up the consulates anytime soon. The initial rumor was August, and now we're hearing appointments are available for October, but I don't think it's going to reopen like that unless the curve is flattened in these countries. They're not going to take that risk of opening up the consulates and having people come in for appointments, it's just not going to happen. So it's really about the data and the science out there. Has that specific country got control of COVID-19?
Continuing to what Jaisal said, so basically the consulates are not seeing anybody right now, or?
No, emergency appointments are available, but what constitutes an emergency is the question. And that is a discretionary viewpoint of the consulate. Maybe there is a specific health issue that's necessary for that individual to have to come into the United States. You're going to have to provide a massive amount of proof. Those are the type of situations that the consulates will review. Doesn't mean they'll approve. They'll review those type of things. Now, to get in touch even with the consulates, if anybody's been trying, you know that it's nearly impossible. It takes multiple attempts to get through. And we've been trying to go through Congress people to help us through some of these situations, because we have a couple of emergency situations and their hands are a little tied. They're not, first of all, they stopped being welcoming about that in the past couple of years. We used to use Congress people a lot, prior to this administration, to kind of resolve some problems, help get some intelligence on what happened and things like that. But since this administration, I don't know if there's been a directive, hey, hands off, don't be participating in this process. If you go to their liaison offices, they're like, fill out a form, and then you don't hear from them for weeks on end. So I think that, even though the consulates have these emergency appointments, they're just not helpful. And the standard is so high to get a visa in those bases that it's almost like, what's the point?
Go ahead.
Yeah, of course. So as you said, because these consulates are closed, thousands of India and other countries awaiting their visa stamping, what exactly happens to people? Like, what exactly can they do?
The individuals who are outside the country?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They're stuck. It's an unfortunate situation, but they're just stuck. If even if the ban wasn't in place, the consulates are not open. So yes, on paper, it's very dramatic what they've done. But on a practical sense, the consulates are not open. So even if that ban never came into place, you're not getting that visa because they're not opening and they don't intend on opening anytime soon. And even if they do open, and whenever they do open, they're going to be working at half capacity. They're going to be staggered appointments. So, this is not going to be a volume-based, let's get these appointments in like they were before. So they're going to have a new plan of action whenever they do open. And what we believe is they're going to prioritize the individuals who filed, made the appointments in March, who's paid the visa fees and got canceled. And those are the individuals they're going to take first. But let's say there's 100 of them. They're not going to do 100 appointments in a week. They're going to stagger all of that out. So by the time, if you're a new individual and the consulates do open in October or even December, you might not be able to even get an appointment out till March. So again, on paper, the proclamation it looks really dramatic, and it is dramatic in a way, but on a practical side, because those consulates are not open, there's nothing that's being done anyway.
Do they have any legal, oh, sorry, were you going?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Do they have any legal recourse?
No, the United States has every right to control who enters the United States. And the administration and the president has very broad executive powers to ban entry. Usually it's tied around emergency situations. Obviously, he's using economic justification for this latest ban, but he has great latitude in who he lets into the United States. And if you remember from a couple of years ago, the Muslim ban, from and barring entry from Muslim-dominated countries, that was actually held up by the Supreme Court. So they have said that he has great discretion. So if he can make up a reason, I mean, it obviously has to be somewhat reasonable, but he's got the power. That's why it's really important who the President of the United States is.
Thank you. One of our viewer, Krishna Pakala, he is writing that he's a faculty member at a US university, and he was told that he should be able to get a visa if they travel as long as consulate is open. But
That's
as you
correct.
mentioned, consulate is closed, so they cannot, correct?
Right, exactly. J1 scholars are not impacted by the proclamation, so he should be able to. But again, when do the consulates open? And I have, students are not, for example, barred from this proclamation, and the new semester is going to start usually in August. That's most colleges. And I've gotten questions like, well, I'm just got admission into a master's program, but the consulates don't open. Like, are they going to open for us? Probably not. They don't care. They don't care that you're an international student. It doesn't matter to them. The administration is focused on one thing, which is the narrative that they are doing something to protect the US workforce. And what happens in recession times, and I've said this, I've been through this is my third recession as a practicing attorney, and every single time the narrative and the environment becomes ugly against foreign workers, foreign people, that they're taking away the jobs. So it's not surprising in a way that this is where we're at, because this is the worst situation in my lifetime. And we have a president who has a specific base that he needs to cater to, and immigration is a hot button topic for those people. So I think until this election passes, expect to continue to have volatility. I am always nervous now. I always have a pit in my stomach. I always wait for a Friday, 5 o'clock, what's coming. It's a Friday news dump, all those types of things will continue to be there. And it's sad. I never thought I'd see this, but it is where we're at.
Another question, one of the viewer has written right now, any chances of EO being revoked for dependents? I'm assuming employment opportunity, or what does it mean?
No, executive order. That's what that means. So what they're talking about is there any sort of litigation? Is there any sort of carve outs for dependents? Because that's one of the most tragic parts of this. We have so many individuals where the principal is here and the dependent is outside the US. They had to travel and they've been stuck because of COVID, and vice versa. And they're small children or parents, there's different things, scenarios. And there is support and building up and casework going on to get plaintiffs to sue on this proclamation. There's already a lawsuit that was filed against the April 20th immigrant visa ban, and they're trying to tag on people to that. But right now, there was a lot of negotiations going on in the background on this before it was even actually posted. I had been posting about this for a while now because I on the ground, I knew that there's negotiations, there's lobbying, there were Republicans who were against all of this. There was just a lot of stuff going on. And the fact that they didn't even give a carve out to dependents, you could have made something that said, hey, if the principal is in the US, then you can get a dependent visa and come in, right? Because what is a dependent doing? They're not taking away any jobs from US workers. They could have been a carve out. Another carve out they could have done is L1A managers. We were extremely surprised that they didn't do a carve out for these executives and CEOs and people like that. I actually, had told someone that I had to look at this twice. I was like, there's no carve out, because I had heard so many negotiations were going on for L1As. So back to the question of, is there going to be something? Is there going to be a carve out? Is there going to be a pullback on this without litigation, without probably going to court? No, the administration is not going to reverse themselves. They're not that type of people. They're not sympathetic in that sense, if that's what you're looking for as an answer. So we have to litigate and we have to see if we can win, but it's going to take time. That's the problem. It's all going to take time.
I have a related question, to the November elections and all this lobbying that you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering what would be the economic impact, in the backdrop of all the policies that we are afraid that they might be put in action.
Listen, I am all for foreign workers. I truly believe in the value that they bring to the United States. Economically, the diversity. I'm an immigrant. I have an American accent, but I was born in India and I came here when I was young. And I think there will be economic fallout because one of the places like the H-1B visa are used by tech companies mostly, right? They're 70% users of that program. Now in tech, you have a less than 3% unemployment because they can't find US skilled workers. So now you've taken away a resource from them, which is foreign talent, right? So now what happens? Do you honestly think they're going to just say, oh, give it to the US guy who doesn't qualify, doesn't know how to do programming, doesn't know how to, that's silly. That's a false narrative. What's going to happen is they're going to offshore this work. And then what happens to the United States? They're going to lose tax revenue, payroll revenue, these individuals who buy American products, do all of that. So who's going to benefit? All the other countries. Canada is going to benefit. India is going to benefit. Once we're through all of this COVID stuff, that's who's going to benefit, not the United States.
One of the questions the Lalita Kalyan has written, what are the chances of extending a ban beyond December 31st?
Very good chance. Very good chance. So the Muslim ban's still going on. It's 2 years or 3 years later. So here's how I think it can play out, depending on who wins the election. If it's a Donald Trump, second term, this is getting extended. Okay, it's not going to end. It's not going to end on December 31st. Maybe it will end in 21 somewhere after we get back to a certain semblance of normalcy. If it's a Biden administration, he doesn't get into power until January 20th of 2021. Okay. Second is that I don't know that Biden administration, this is their first priority. Are they going to walk in on day one and say all executive orders that the Trump administration did void? I don't think so. I think this will push out to probably at least spring of 2021 if it's Biden, and it probably even longer if it's a Trump administration. And I hate saying that out to anybody because I don't want to dash anybody's hopes, but I want to be very practical because I think individuals have to look at it on a practical level and make real concrete decisions about the future of being in the United States.
I have a reader question right now.
Yeah.
Said they're going to file their I-140 after a long search for citizenship for a job, which includes various advertisements. They're asking, is there any possibility to get an exemption, or possibility that they can expect an exemption from the Secretary of Labor, Secretary of State's review coming in the next 30 days?
So, okay, so that part of it is the scary part for me. Okay, I mean, I was anticipating the ban for a long time. What I have been saying also is we have to look at that other part of this proclamation, which was the administration wants a review of the green card process, the EB2, EB3, and the LCA process. And so do I think if you're in recruitment for a perm application or you're doing an I-140 at this time, do I think this proclamation is going to impact you today? No, I think you proceed as normal and do all of the things that you need to do. And I don't think there's going to be an impact. But I think that if this administration has a second term, you have to watch out for those words. Those were buzzwords. Those are scary words. Those are thoughts out there that they're having that, hey, okay, we got rid of all of these people by stopping them from coming in. How about the 580,000 H-1B people who are in the United States waiting for this green card? How do we get rid of them? And this is one of the things that they're looking at, and it's real, which is, hey, we're going to make them redo the labor certification process, which is the perm process. We're going to make, change up the LCA process. So now that might take a long time to come into place because they have to go through rulemaking and different aspects, and that takes several months. Sometimes rules take years even to be actually implemented. But it is something that does put a pit in my stomach that this is how far they're thinking. It's not even just limited to this entry of news. They're like, how do we get rid of the people who are here? So to the question, I don't think right now any of this is going to have an impact on perm I-140 processing. So I would advise everybody to continue forward. The thing that people have to worry about with perm processing in a recession is audits. Because the rule in a perm processing or the labor certification green card processing is that the employer is testing the US market or US qualified workers. In a good economy, it's very easy to not get a lot of resumes. It's easy to say, hey, I didn't find anybody qualified for this position. In a recession, during perm processing, you're going to get slammed with resumes. And you have to get through that very carefully because you might find somebody who's qualified, and then that stops everything. So that's the nervous part when you're in a tough economy for green card processing.
Go ahead, Joseph.
Yeah, I know that, you know, if an H-1B worker loses a job, they do have some time after that
Yes.
to look for another job before their status expires.
Right.
So in this COVID-19 situation, how does that category works? Like, they still have that time, and if they have lost job during this time?
Yeah. The law still allows that 60-day grace period if they have that available to them. But in this economy, that's not a lot of time to find another job. So that's the issue for a lot of people. What we are finding is that there's just no jobs out there. Because so there's a 60-day grace period, just to let everybody know what that means is that if you're on an H visa, for example, and you get terminated or your employment ends, or you get fired, or your H gets denied, or anything like that, you have 60 days, if you have that on your I-94, to find a new employer to file a new petition for you to change your status or leave the country. Now, leaving the country at this point is almost impossible to get a flight out. Changing status is something that you may have to look at, and a lot of people are looking at that, and then finding a new employer. And finding a new employer is tough. If you work in you're an H-1B employee and you're working in staffing or anything like that, these jobs, are tough to find right now. And some employers are not wanting to take that risk either. They want to hold on to their people that they have. They're like, I don't necessarily want to bring on somebody new and deal with their immigration issues. But that's still there. I get asked, is there any sort of leeway because of COVID-19? Has this 60 days extended to 90 days, 120 days? Because guess what? I can't leave. I can't get a job. No. And then no, there's no sympathy here from anybody in the administration.
Follow-up question. This is one situation when a person lost the job and he or she, they're still in the country.
Yeah.
What happens if the person was outside the country and due to all this situation, they are told that they are no longer with the company?
Mm-hmm.
So no change in situation? Same?
No change. So what happens is that if you were here in the United States on an H, okay, and you left and then you lost your job, because that happened to a lot of people, right? Because they went on vacation and they couldn't get back to their job, and the client or the employer's like, we don't want to keep doing this remote thing or whatever. We need to fire you or lay you off. They're not subject to the H-1B lottery as the rules stand today. And I have to make that very clear because the administration is looking to change how all of this is done. But as the rules stand today, they are, if let's say in 6 months, okay, they find a new employer who wants to sponsor them, they're not subject to the H-1B lottery, the H-1B cap. So the new employer will just file a new petition for them, and they won't have to go through that whole business again. And then hopefully the consulates are back up. If their visa has expired, they'll get a new visa and they can come back in. But the time that they spent outside, in the US will count against that H-1B time. But the time they spent outside the United States doesn't run that H-1B clock. So that is the only options for individuals who have lost their job and who are outside the US, is to find a new employer who's willing to sponsor them. Very hard. If you don't have a visa, they're not going to be doing that. If you have a visa, you got some opportunities here because you don't have to go through the And premium processing is back, so that's a good thing. So, you know.
Yeah,
One
that's a
more
good thing,
question. One more question I got is like from Manish Iyer. I have completed my 6 years in US and stuck in US because of COVID. And if I-140 approved and got extension, then can he work in US or need to go out for stamping?
So he's in the US on an H-1B. He has his I-140 approved.
And he has completed his 6 years.
So then he can apply for a seventh, eighth, ninth year extension. So what the H-1B is a max of 6 years. If you have an I-140 approved before your completion of your 6th year, you can continue to extend your H-1B status until you get your green card. If you file the perm before the conclusion of your 5th year in the US, you can get at least a 1-year extension. So he's not stuck, like he's got opportunities or, you know, he can extend that H-1B because he has that approved I-140 and
So he doesn't need to leave. So he doesn't need to leave the country.
No.
Stamping.
Leaving the country is about people who, you know, status gets denied, their I-94 expires, those type of things. That's not what it seems like it is.
Okay. One more question. Can TN visa holder continue if their visa expires?
They have to file an extension in the United States. So TNs, right, they're Mexico and Canada. They're, and here's another thing with the executive order. The Department of State has clarified that Canadians who are on H-1s and L-1s are not subject to this proclamation because Canadian nationals are visa exempt. So they said, so if you're on an H-1B, you have an H-1B and you're outside the United States and Canada, you are not subject to this rule, this proclamation. So you can actually come in. So if you have an L, you can actually come in. And so that's, you know, again, I'm not trying to knock Canada, but this is a little unfair that you're able to do that. You know, either you do it blanketly and then there's no, you know, separation of one country to the next country, or you create these carve-outs for people then, you know. But TNs are not, if you're in the United States, and we do a lot of TNs, I'm filing a lot of in-country extensions. So you can do that. You don't have to step out of the United States and come back to renew the TN. It's annoying to have to pay the filing fees and it's, you know, longer processing, but definitely availability is there for that.
Firas, any questions?
Yeah, I have one more question. So last week Forbes had an article that said the administration is going to crack down on the existing H-1B holders as well, that they have to go through additional labor certifications. Can you say some thoughts on that?
Well, this is what we're gearing up litigation in the back of all of our heads. That is going to be massive. I don't think they can just do it. I really don't, because you have to change decades of rules to recreate this process for this situation. And there is laws, there's regulations, not executive orders, not liaison notes. Actual regulation says how this process is supposed to be. So you have to draft a new regulation against that, you know, overturning that, which you just simply can't do that. You have to have a lot of vetting. It has to get, you know, go through what's called rulemaking, which means it's got to get posted for public comment. So I don't think that's a feasible thing that can happen immediately. Is it a long-term plan of the administration? Absolutely. And that's why November counts. Because if we have a second term of this administration, is this where we're looking at in the next couple of years? Probably. And, you know, they're all about merit-based too, right? And creating the point system like Canada and things like that. So we could see that evolved there. But I think what all of this does, these leaks, remember, this is, reporters don't just get this information like published somewhere. Somebody's leaking this information. And I think it's a lot of it is purposeful leaking so that people are seeing in the public that the administration is cracking down, that they're going to do something about it. Now, the realistic, the practical way to do this, nobody cares. We're in this, like, you know, 10-second soundbite life at this point, you know, and that's all people care about. So I don't think it's practical that it's going to happen immediately. It just makes me nervous. Wow, this is how far you want to come. that's what I can't stand, because then that makes me think when I file a case, you're going to be real tough, because in the background, that directive must be like, look at that stuff real carefully. Look at it 3 times, look at it 4 times. So things I was able to, file and get through very easily, or, even not easily, now you're just put up another barrier for me, or you're just looking at it with a biased eye again, So those are the things that bother me about those kind of outlandish statements that come out of the administration.
Jaisal, you have anything?
Like it is a really scary situation. Like, you know, being, an immigration lawyer, which way would you expect, what are the policies, what is the way out for the, the workers who want to get into the country, and what are your expectations from the government, that which way they should go?
It's a really hard, I struggle in this practice now, I know that the people who feel the brunt of it are the foreign workers, the dependents, all of these stuff. I get it. Every day worrying about your status, and every day worrying about tomorrow, right? There's nothing safe here, nothing steady. But as a practitioner who has to talk to these people every day, who has to help these people every day, it does take a toll on me. I've been doing this so long that the past 2-3 years have definitely burnt me out, and I am very ready to be scared every day until November. That's how I'm planning, how I practice and how I work, thinking that it's just about to get worse. That's how you have to think about it, because the President Trump is losing in the polls. When somebody's losing, right? If you just take on a very basic human level, they're going to do anything and everything to win. And if immigration is such a hot button issue, he's going to come at these people. It's just how it works. So as an immigration attorney, I'm extremely nervous for my clients. I'm nervous for the foreign workers. I don't have any comforting words for them. I wish I could tell them it'll be fine. Don't worry about it. This is the worst it's going to get. No, I'm thinking it's going to get worse, For people who are making some very critical decisions of the United States as their destined place to come and, grow their life, have their children's, plant roots here, you need to think a couple of times over, and I'm an immigration attorney. I lose business when I say these words, but I'm also a human being, and I have a lot of empathy and sympathy for these people who are just sitting there with a pit in their stomach every single day. Every time they file an extension, they're scared out of their minds. Every time they travel, it's even if you have a visa, doesn't mean you're going to get in. You can get stopped at the airport, right? So it's never ending, and you can get, my cousin's daughter came in the other day, I want to say Friday, and we've been waiting. And I'm an immigration attorney, and I advised her and I told her everything, she got pulled into secondary, and she's sitting there for an hour with a 5-year-old. Her husband is here on an L1. She's coming on an L2. It's a dependent visa. She has a valid visa. Nothing there, And she got pulled into secondary, and she was freaking out, and I'm like WhatsApping her, like, it's okay. This is what they're looking at. Don't worry. You'll be all right. This is how you answer these questions and stuff like that. But I would think twice. I would really think twice. I would think twice for the students, because they're coming after them next. I would think about all these H workers. What is this the life you want? Because if the United States is the life you want, understand if this administration stays in power, the next 4 years will continue to be difficult. It is just how it will be. And you have to make a real decision of mental peace, economic prosperity, home country. Like, those are all things that have to be thought of.
Well, I'm glad that you you have been giving very straightforward, honest answers. I'm glad that we had this discussion today and we are having it today.
Thank you.
One more question
Mhm.
from Kalyan Jonardula, that he
Mhm.
came for H-1B stamping to India,
Mhm.
but because of travel ban, now he's planning to apply for F1. He got the valid I-20.
Mhm.
Do you see any issue of getting him the visa, one? And second thing is, like, once he gets a visa and if he comes here, later on, would he be able to convert to his H-1B, or would that be difficult?
Okay, so let's start with the second question first, which is if he comes into the United States on an F1 visa, can he file a change of status? Anybody can file a change of status. You have to wait at least 90 days before you can file a COS to any type of status. Otherwise, there's what's called an intent issue, that you basically use the other visa to just kind of fake your way into the United States. So that is something that's doable. Do I recommend it so quickly? Absolutely not. If you came in here to study, and then look to the different opportunities that might be out there. Do I think he'll get an F1 visa? Very difficult to get one, I would say, especially when you've been here in the US on an H-1B. One of the things that student visa issue is they don't have what's called a dual intent, meaning like if you're coming here to study, they basically mean that's all your agenda is. Now, that's obviously not the agenda of everybody. They come here to study, then they're going to want to stay here, get a job, and things like that. But when you're in front of an officer at a U.S. consulate, they want to look to see that you're not going to use that to circumvent and change your status. So it's called an immigrant intent. So when you're a student, they are going to look at it and say, hey, do you look like a potential of somebody who will be staying in this country too long, or you're going to change your status, or you're going to be an overstay? Someone who's been here previously on an H-1B, do they not have the more incentive to come and use that visa and then change their status? That's a profile right there. They're going to get triggered. So do I think he's going to have a hard time getting that visa? Absolutely. So he better be going to Columbia or Harvard or, one of these big prominent schools, and versus some, lower tier school, because you don't have a valid thing to say that. If I got a scholarship and I was an Indian, I got a scholarship to Harvard and I was previously here, do my MBA, and I'm at the consulate, listen, consulate officer, I got a scholarship to Harvard. I'm going to do my MBA. But once I get out of here, I don't need to be in the US. Like, I can go anywhere in the world. Like, that's the kind of person that they're going to believe, they have no desire to stay here.
I have one more reader question.
Yeah.
So, Alec Chobi, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, is asking, is there a possibility of getting a national interest waiver by virtue of being an employee of a well-known financial services organization for visa stamping?
Okay, that's a loaded question, and that's a very case-specific question. It's difficult to answer. National interest waiver is exactly what those words means, that the government is going to give you a green card basically because you are going to bring some sort of, it's in the national interest of the United States to have you here versus in your home country or somewhere else. Now, most of the people who are qualified and get those type of visas are individuals who are doing some sort of very prominent work in their specific field of endeavor. Think cancer researchers, AIDS work, doing that kind of stuff. If you're working in a finance company, and that's going to be a high bar. Now, what specifically are you going to do? Are you going to change, the financial world in some way, and that the United States wants you, that talent that you have, that to stay in the country? Possibly. But if you are just working for a well-known finance company and Goldman Sachs or something like that, and you're high level, but what are you doing? What are you doing for the United States? That's how you tackle a national interest waiver. They want to keep you here. They don't want to have you go back because they want to use you for their benefit. So it's a very case-specific type of thing, and I would recommend definitely that, if they want to, they can definitely reach out to me about that, but that would be something I would have to really look at carefully for them.
I see lots of questions saying that any chances will there be any possibility to exempt parent of US citizen during the next 30-day review window? Or do you see anything on that side?
I
Or for
mean,
US parents of US citizens primarily?
no. If they're talking about the green card context, no. Because he just extended, the initial ban was for the immigrant visa processing was in April. He just extended it along with this new proclamation. So no, I don't think that they're going to do any sort of carve out or exemptions for that. The only other options of to reunite into the United States would be for them to apply for a B2 visa. But again, when you have an I-130 file, and normally that's what has happened because a U.S. citizen child has sponsored their parents, there's an I-130 in place in the government records. New people who are trying to apply for the B2 visas, the parents, they struggle in getting those visas because guess what? You have an immigrant intent because you have a U.S. citizen child who had filed an I-130 for you. Again, the profiling will happen. But that might be their only shot until this ban is expiring or it's over for them to kind of reunite and come into the United States. But no, there's going to be nothing. This is going to extend on. I just really just don't see him letting it expire and not renewing it. I just think this will go on until he's no longer there. That's how it works.
Preeti Venkat has asked a question. Can we do H-1B petition renewal from outside US after the expiry of current I-94 during this situation?
Sure. So the visa, like the petition filing in the US continues on. So it doesn't matter whether you're in the United States or you're outside the United States. If I want to file an H-1B for you and you're outside the United States, I can file it. I can get you an approval. Well, what does that approval mean at the end of the day? Because if your visa has expired, consulates are not open. We have a ban against getting these renewed visas. So what would be the point of me filing for you anyway? So I can file. I can get you the approval. You want a 797 approval notice? I got it. I'll give it to you. But the practical part of it is you're not getting a new visa at this point. Unfortunately, if you had a visa that is still valid for company A and now company B wants to file for you, that's doable. I can get you the approval. You can come in on the company A visa, show at the port of entry the company B approval. You'll be okay with that. But if that visa is expired, doesn't matter what I do for you.
Jason, you got a question?
I have a question for one of the readers, GP Singh. So he asks, can a person come to US on B1 and wait for 90 days to COS to H-1B? Is it okay?
Okay. So like I said previously, yep, you can absolutely come in. Can you absolutely file a COS? Sure, of course, the law allows it. No problem. You got to wait the 90 days. Now, again, the H-1B, somebody in that situation, did you have a previous H-1B? Like, it's not like you can just change the H-1B. If you've never had an H-1B, you have to go through the H-1B cap, which we just finished. So the next cap is March 2021. So you coming in here and thinking you're going to get an H-1B if you've never had an H-1B, that's not going to happen. So, but let's say a year ago, you had an H-1B, you were here in the US, you worked, and something happened and you left. And now you're coming back on a B1 for a legitimate business visa. And then you go back to that old employer and he's like, hey, I want to keep you here. I want to rehire you or something like that. And that's how it kind of comes out. Sure, you can file the change of status and then, you're not subject to the cap or anything like that. So that's definitely something that's doable.
Yeah.
Ferris, you got a question?
Yeah, sure. So earlier we talked about how important November is, but what do we expect from a second Trump like term versus a Biden administration? Sorry.
Well, if he gets reelected, please don't talk to me for 24 hours. I'm gonna be really upset. So there's different ways of thinking about the second term if that happens.
Mhm.
And I think it goes to psychology of the man more than a cohesive policy by the administration. A lot of this stuff, I personally believe, and this is just my personal beliefs, is that he's doing this because he's scared of not getting reelected, that the poll numbers are really low. He has to do something to show his supporters that he's taking an active measure, to help them, right? Because he's not built the wall, right? That didn't happen. And so he's doing all these other things and stuff. So now if he gets elected, does he not care at that point, right? Like, because I again, my opinion is that I don't think there is a moral thought behind this, in the sense of, this is what I believe. I'm a conservative, and I don't like these workers. I don't think it's about that. I think it's very just a political moves that are happening. So once he gets reelected and he's safe for another 4 years, does he not then care about any of this? And does the agenda become about whatever I want to do at this point? And immigration, I don't care, because I'm not going to get it, I'm not running again. And so will that ease off possibly if he gets elected and he stops caring about it? That's part of my thinking, or the only way I can comfort myself in a way, if he does get reelected. Maybe he's not going to care at that point. And then maybe 21 is brighter, and 22 is even better, something of that kind. And if it's the Biden administration, I think it'll take time, but maybe, somewhere in 21, we see an easing up of things.
One good question I'm seeing it here, and that is very relevant. If primary visa holder is stuck in India
Mm-hmm.
and have to be transferred to the Indian payroll
Mm-hmm.
of that company,
Mm-hmm.
can dependent work on H4 EAD?
Right. So that's a very open question, and I don't have a great answer to that, except what my thought process is on this. Okay. So normally, if you have H4 dependent people in the United States, and the H principal travels for vacation or business or whatever, and the H4 dependents don't travel for this temporary trip, it doesn't stop their H4 status, right? It doesn't negate it, doesn't void it, because this he's just left, or she just left for a little vacation. They're coming back in, things like that. So we've never had to be concerned about what happens to a dependent who remains and when the principal leaves for a short trip. The issue here is going to be very different. Here in this situation, this is not going to be a temporary travel. And it's how you define temporary, right? That's going to be important. 30 days, 60 days. These are people who are out for months. They are not in H-1B status in that sense, right? What happens to the dependents who are stuck? Are they actually on H-4 status? And that's going to be a question of how an employer that holds that H-1B approval treats that employee, that principal. If that H-1B employer terminates them or takes them off the US payroll or deactivates them from their system as an active US employee, the argument is going to be that those H-4 people who are in the United States are no longer on H-4 status, that they are not legal in the country because the H-1B principle is out. So now, in this scenario where this individual is now being taken off of the US payroll and now is going to be put on the Indian payroll, he's not an employee of a US entity. So how can an H-4 dependent remain in the United States and continue to work? That's going to be a serious issue for a lot of people. I don't have a law or guidance or policy to read out to you and say, here is the law. My understanding is based on labor and employment law and based on H-1B law, in the sense of an H-1, you're not in H status, or employment authorization doesn't hit when you're not in the United States. So taking all of these things together, my analysis is you're going to have a problem. If you stop being on H-1B on US payroll and you move to India payroll and you have dependent in the United States, there's going to be an issue at some point in time. That or have they remained in the United States being out of status? Not illegal because they have a valid I-94. They're not accruing unlawful time, but out of status. And the next question I'll get asked is, well, where is this going to impact me? One, is it going to, it might impact you trying to come back in the next time you travel. Two, it might impact you on your green card process where they're wanting to see that you maintained your status. So these are all things that can come down the line. So it's a tough situation. There's no formal guidance on how this is all going to be treated out, but the trigger, the minute you're off that US payroll, you have no argument to make to say, I'm on an H-1B, I'm just out of the US for a temporary trip. So you gotta be thinking carefully.
I think we're coming close to the end time of this session, but I'll let Feras and Jaisal ask one question each. We'll make those last two
Make
questions.
it easy.
Right. And I know that we're getting tons and tons of questions. I know that, but I think in due fairness to you and to everyone, as we have planned for 1 hour session, so we'll try to go with last two questions. So Feras or Jaisal, whoever has the next question, go ahead and ask Nandini.
Yeah, sure. So I have one more reader question actually.
Mm-hmm.
They're asking Namita Bawasakar, sorry if I mispronounced that again. They're asking, can I enter the US on a B1/B2 to reunite family and then change the status to H4?
Okay, so this is a very common question of getting asked. Like I've been plummeted by these emails and the private messages on this question. Again, if the consulate's open and if you're able to even get that visa, by law, sure, you're able to enter the United States on that type of visa. Now, here's the problem. Are you entering, making a misrepresentation? Meaning that you're truly not in the U.S., coming into the U.S. to as a tourist, because that's normally what you're going to get. You're not going to get the B1, you're going to get the B2, which is you're coming here to tour, you're here to visit family, you're here to do this, and you're going to be definitely leaving the United States after a certain period of time. So when you file that COS, okay, is there going to be an element in a questioning of misrepresentation? I definitely think there will be. The other thing is that I have no problem, with anybody trying to do this, but you are not going to be the first or last or the 1,000th who's having the exact same thought. I have gotten these messages everywhere you can think of, in every portal you can think of, and they're all having that same thought. So when multiple people have that same thought, what happens is the fraud and misrepresentation rates go up tremendously. And so legit people who are maybe using that visa not to stay, because maybe they've decided, I just need to come back and I need to wrap up my life. I have to sell my car. I have to sell my house. I have to pick up my kids' school records, things like that. They may not get that visa. But as by law, sure, if you can get that visa, you can convince an officer you have no intention besides being a tourist. You come in and 90 days, 120 days later, you file for a COS. Of course, by law, you can do it. Do I think it's smart? I don't think that's a great idea. I think everybody has that same idea, and you're going to have to think about that very carefully. Any other questions?
Yes,
yeah, I just one quick question. You mentioned earlier that international students will be the next target. Why do you say that? Okay.
So the reason I'm saying that is there's a lot of talk, and it's real talk, that they're going to gut the STEM OPT program. They're going to also look at the optional practical, the 12 months that they're immediately get. And right now, if you don't know, that the Chinese grad students have actually been banned from coming back into the United States. So one of the things that we are hearing is that they feel, and again, it's part of the same ugly narrative, right? that foreigners somehow are taking away these jobs, right? It started with the Chinese students, right? That they were supposedly coming here to spy for the Chinese government, or they're learning all these technologies and then they're taking it back. And then within the STEM program, there's so much abuse and fraud because it's really not being used for a practical training. It's actually they're used to do consultant work and things like that. But here's another trigger that people are not realizing where this started from. I don't know if anybody knows about Integra Solutions, PVT, some Inc., I think is the name. The owners of the companies were just arrested a month ago, because what they did is they falsified offer letters for thousands of STEM OPT kids, even though they never worked for them. And these STEM students took those fake offer letters and extended their OPT with that. And we are getting emails from students whose visas are being revoked. They have valid F visas, but the Department of State is revoking it. So all of this is a pattern. You know, it started from some of that. It's the conversations of STEM, where I believe that in the background, the administration is definitely thinking about, you know, gutting the program, stopping the program, putting a lot of oversight on the program, just different things. You know, you just have to Google it and you'll see it all over the place and stuff. But Integra is a big issue that is happening out there right now.
Is there time for one more question? I found one more question.
Go ahead, Jay.
I'm going to charge you, but okay.
Oh, goodness. So this reader is asking, how long can one work on a U.S. payroll from India, especially if the employer doesn't have any operations in India?
There's no answer for that. It's going to be, if you get investigated, if you get an audit, you have to convince the officer, you know, what is considered reasonable. Now, if, you know, I'm in that situation, it's my client, and, you know, do I make a COVID-19 argument? They can't travel back in. Like, there's ways, you know, I would try to argue that, but there's no law on this. What exactly is it 30 days, 90 days, you know, none of that. It's all going to be subjective. It's all going to be, you know, dealing with the investigator who comes in to check on this information. So no like black and white answer on that.
Nandini, we really want to thank you. I know you have a very busy schedule and a very busy time. I know in the weekend you catch up lots of your paperwork and other work and all that, but we really appreciate you joining us and answering all our viewers' questions and concerns and all that. And this is an unprecedented time. I think some of the things that's happening is first time ever. Even the pandemic, even in my life, I have not seen anything like this, neither in India or in the United States. So I think it's literally unbelievable what's going on. And for you providing this insight to all this concerned people is really, we really appreciate it a lot. And thank you very much. And I think Jaisal from Canada joined for that same reason. Joined from
So thanks for your insights, Nandini. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Really
Thank you for
appreciate it.
having me. I appreciate it. And I'm more than welcome to, you know, come back and walk people through it. It's a hard time. It's a hard time.
We will come back to you. You just said it. Hopefully soon. We will try to have another session for our viewers. And what I can tell the viewers is, like, please reach out to your immigration attorney, or just reach out to Nandini. She has a good practice in New Jersey, and she's very prominent. She's been featured in multiple publications. She has been with us for a long time. So we really appreciate that. And Nandini, if you want to give out your contact detail or something to our viewers, if somebody wants to write to you or something, I don't know what you prefer to do. So just leaving it up to you for the closing words from you.
No, it's perfectly fine. They can reach out to me via email, which is nandini.nair@gmlaw.com. They can call my office at 732-494-4800. They can, you know, I get private messages on Twitter. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's at Nair Law. You can LinkedIn me. I get messages on there. You can, I have a lot of portals that I'm part of, and I answer as many questions as I can. Sometimes they're very complex, and that just gets over like too much, but I can definitely help people out. I'm very understanding of situations, and I don't believe in holding what I know to myself. We're all human beings, right? We have to help each other. It's just how the world is. And to me, being kind and being generous with what I know to help somebody is how I practice, how I live, how I do everything.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
Thank you.
take care, guys.